I don't know if you heard, but we just had a big development in the unfolding Spygate investigations. It's just been revealed that the Justice Department's investigation of the FBI...
The red light. I didn't mean that joke. Sorry, red light.
I want to go to Lisa, who wants to talk to us about whether God created the earth and God existed. Lisa, are you there?
Hi, Lisa.
I'm here.
Hello. Good evening. Thanks for calling.
You're welcome. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Tell us more about what we got written here.
I believe that God created the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh.
Cool. Oh, I hear a beeping noise.
Yes, I do hear beeping.
Sorry.
That's okay. The Hot Pocket is ready.
So the first thing I would ask is, why?
Yes?
So I'm asking, why do you believe this?
Why do I believe this?
Yes.
You said you think the earth is created in 6 days? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe it. I'm just thinking if I say because I was taught it, that I mean it's in the Bible and I was taught it, and I feel like I've seen that the earth isn't really millions of years old, and
Sure. Okay. So, okay, you listed a couple things there. So that's something that you were taught. You believe there's scientific evidence to support it, and you think that the Bible also validates your claim, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's a couple different ways we can go there, Anthony. What do you think we should talk about first?
I think it would be important to acknowledge that you could possibly be taught something that might seem far-fetched that might really be true in reality. But then again, I could be taught something by people that I love and trust, people that have never led me astray. They would never want to see me believe things that weren't true, that could teach me something that isn't true. Are you willing to agree that a person could be taught something that is true or not true? That not everything that they're taught is true? Okay.
Yes, I believe that.
Cool. Do you agree that it's conceivable that you could have been taught something that's not true?
You mean about creation?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that I was taught something that's not true, yes.
And yet you think that you have other things to justify concluding that it's true at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say is the best thing? What's the best justification, the most solid reason why you're sure that God created in 6 days?
The Bible says so.
I'm thinking.
Take your time.
The most solid justification that would make me believe it's true.
Well, to be clear, I think we were asking what is the most solid piece of the most solid reason why you think that it's true? We're not really getting into disconfirming it at this point. We're interested in what is that one thing that if you didn't have it, you wouldn't think that there was a God who made everything in 6 days and then rested on the seventh.
One of the things I believe is that God's spirit bears witness with my spirit, which I guess you can't measure that, but it's a very real thing to me.
What I guess what we're kind of getting to is, how are you concluding that your God is real in the first place to get to the point where he would decide to create everything in 6 days? So let's dig down a little bit deeper then. How are you concluding that this God is real?
Because his spirit mingles with my spirit.
All of creation declares him and praises him.
All of creation?
What is it
What
about
is
creation
orderly?
that convinces you that there's a God?
Surely you've met
Bible
people.
verses come to mind. Huh?
Bible verses?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of Bible verses, but then I guess you would say there's doubt that that's real. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think I would ask you why you would consider the Bible to be a reliable source of knowledge on what's true and what's not true.
Well, isn't that what faith is about? I mean, you take it by faith.
What does faith mean to you?
It's something that might not look real, but you believe in it. It's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Something that might not look real. Faith is something that might not look real, but you still believe in it.
To some people, yeah. I mean, you take it by faith. I mean,
Are you taking it by faith that the Bible is true?
I'm doing good.
And
bro.
everything
the
in
Bible
it?
is true.
Yeah, that everything that the Bible says is true, and that the God is real. Is faith the big linchpin here to this belief?
Yeah.
Would you use faith to come to the conclusion of other things being true?
Such as,
Well, anything really, that you know that your mother or father exists, for example.
well, I know they exist because I grew up with them.
So you have a different reason than faith to know that they exist, right?
Right. But I mean, when you sit down in a chair, don't you have some faith that it's not going to crumble underneath you?
But are we using faith in the same way there that we're using it in the way that we're describing knowing the existence of something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying really hard to think about this and try to think, well, you know, what can I really say that will...
Then why did you call the show? You called the show, but now while you're on the call, you got to think really hard of what I can say that would prove to you that I'm justified in my beliefs. You should have already had that down packed before you called the show.
not seem empty to you, and I'm just not sure what to say.
Yeah.
I'm not that great a speaker.
No, I think you're doing really great. And sometimes people don't spend a lot of time thinking about these beliefs. So don't feel bad. I'm really glad that you called. I mean, I think it takes a lot of guts to call an atheist show, or I don't know if you're.
Yeah.
Are you calling yourself an atheist show, or? We're sponsored by the atheist
We're
community.
sponsored by an atheist community. I don't exclusively call this an atheist show, but
My son put me up to this, okay?
hey, I think that's wonderful that you're willing to go through and actually call the show. And so props to you.
Can I just talk about faith a little bit more?
Yeah,
if that's
go
okay?
ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so you gave a great definition of faith, and you gave a great example of faith, and it's a very common one. A lot of people will say that it might not look like something that's believable, but I'm going to believe it anyways. That is close to the definition I think that you gave. Or I'm going to sit in a chair and I'm going to take it on faith that it's going to hold my weight. It's a very common thing that we hear. But I think there's a big difference in the way that most people who are using it to conclude that gods are real, or that holy books are a source of truth, or that the universe was created in 6 days and then the deity rested on the seventh day.
That's the thing too, bro. Like, I believe in science. And the contingency argument, it don't really hold a lot of weight, but it makes you think. And that's why I did that piece right there. This is science. Shit, can I sit down? Science says there was nothing, and then all of a sudden, there was everything. And everything came together to give rise to life, and life gave rise to consciousness that can ponder and wonder about nothing. But then, how can you get something from nothing? That's the whole question, bro. How do you get light, gravity, what we call temperature, electricity, magnetism? How do you get all these phenomena that we are aware of, that we can experience, and we are starting to learn how to manipulate, but we still don't know what the fuck they are? Yeah, we got lights and we have alternating current and all this shit, but what is electricity? We don't know. We can use magnets, but what is magnetism? I know if I let this shit go, it's gonna fall, but what the fuck is gravity? And science says all that shit came from nothing. But then religion says all that shit came from God. But you can't prove that there's a fucking God. There's no way to prove that there's a God. You can't do it. So we're stuck in between, where we just need to continue to research. Yeah, but we spelled masturbator wrong. Or the correct spelling was already taken. There must be a lot of angry masturbators out there, and everybody's trying to figure out a different way to spell masturbate so they can be that one angry masturbator. McRib? Shit. It's getting dark outside? Fuck that. No, that's why you gotta read everything. Don't believe everything you read. So you gotta read everything. And then, once you read enough shit, and enough different sources start saying the same thing, then you can see where facts are at and what is factual. You know what I'm saying? Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. Yeah? Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. That's some crazy ass art.
that is a testing component. So I might, by your definition, use faith and sit in a chair and it holds my weight. But then again, I have a way of testing to see if my faith was not warranted in that situation. What would be a good way to test that situation with a chair?
Yeah. Somebody just liked my Instagram post. Guess what?
Collapse under my weight. It might squeak and one of the arms fall off or something like that. That would be feedback.
The legs might look a little iffy.
Yeah.
There might be something about it, right? My point is that I think the way that you're using the word faith might be lacking a critical element, and that's the ability to test to see if the faith that you're applying to conclude that something is true is not reliable, is woefully inadequate to support the belief that you think is true. So we might be throwing a lot at you here, especially if this isn't something that you normally talk about or think about. And I don't want you to feel like you were put on the spot, but
Okay.
give us a little feedback. Like, has this been helpful to you too?
No, I don't. What I want to say, one thing is my faith is very important to me because it's sort of how I'm able to look at the world and see. I went through a lot of adverse experiences growing up, and the son that put me up to this, he once commented like, "Mom, I'm surprised you're not in a gutter somewhere, drunk or on drugs, just because of what I went through." And I look at it like, God was there. Does God want terrible things to happen to people? No. But I believe that He can sustain us and He can help us and strengthen us so that we're not overcome by them. I mean, I guess some people are overcome by them, but for me, it's been a rock in the midst of a...
He sustains us so we can overcome them. Well, I guess some people have been overcome by them. You got to, you just double talk your own self like real fast, like, because the shit don't work for everybody, does it? And how come you so special when other people got fucking shit lives? When little kids 6 years old die from leukemia. No matter how much they church family pray for them. What's wrong, God? But you, and I just feel like it was God. What about the fucking soldier who got his leg blown off serving his fucking country because he thought God told him to go fight for freedom? Huh? Now he an amputee. He can pray all he want, day in and day out, fervently, with a believing heart. His leg will not grow back, no matter how much he prayed to God for his leg to grow back. It just don't. A lot of this shit don't add up. And people who say they pray for all these miracles and God blessed them with all of this, then what about the other people who pray for the same shit and it don't work for them? It don't work for them. It was their time and God needed more angels. God got all the angels He fucking want. He make the angels. Well, my faith, that's the only thing, like, to me, religion doesn't seem logical enough to say God did it, and that's everything. But then science, we can't explain abiogenesis to start with. So, I mean, it's like, we're still just fucking stuck. And then, I mean, in the last 500 years, we've come a long way scientifically. I mean, in another 500 years, will we be able to see past the event horizon? Will we do some more shit with the fucking Higgs boson? Will we actually understand how matter can produce a consciousness that is aware of itself in a subjective manner? Like, there's a lot of shit we can't really figure out right now, but it's still better to say, yo, I don't know how it works, instead of saying, oh, it was God, and God did it. They really don't. And I find this shit fascinating, and I go through phases where I really listen to, study, and read on certain topics. I'll grab the book I'm reading now. So I'm currently reading The Religious Case Against Belief by James Christ. And I'm not that far into it, 43 pages, but he's basically, so far, is just going over other people who have used science or theology to challenge the religious establishment at the time. He goes back to, he starts with Galileo and Nicholas, and he starts talking about, because Galileo is extremely blackballed and his writings were fucking banned, and this last couple of pages he talked about Martin Luther and his 95 Theses and how that motherfucker got blackballed and his literature was banned. And King tried to kill that motherfucker. He had to go hide out with his homies for a couple years just to fucking save his goddamn skin. But that's as far as I've gotten so far. He's just talking about other historic figures who have challenged the religious establishment, and how when you challenge religion, especially these pompous ass popes at the time, and you make sense and it's logical, and they just want to fucking destroy you for that shit, because they know that religion holds power and control, and once that control starts to slip, you know what I'm saying, ain't no telling. I don't know what would happen. Like, how would the world be if it was, you know, if the majority of the world was secular and not religious? Like, well, if it was just opposite from what it is now, because most of the world is still religious. You know, a lot of people in a lot of different cultures and countries still practice many different religions. Orthodox religions that have been around for a long time, but then you have a lot of non-secular countries too, and it's growing a lot now. People are just like not believing these myths. They're only myths, fables, allegories, and that's all they are. Just like Zeus and fucking Hercules and Odin and Poseidon and all them motherfuckers. It's the same shit. The same shit. They're just fucking stories. George Orwell wrote The Time Machine. He also wrote one of my favorite books, 1984, which is about a dystopian future where he actually came up with the term Big Brother, where the entire system was this police state that monitored every individual, and they had this ministry of love, which was really a way to make people hate, and a ministry of peace, which was really all about war. And they started fucking eliminating the different words from the common language so that you couldn't think too much, yo. So they didn't want you to fucking think, yo. And now, like, when you see motherfuckers use emojis and LOL and OMG, and it's like, oh my god, this fucking Orwellian dystopia is like, this shit is actually happening right now. You know, because it's not, you can't say excellent or terrific or tremendous or exuberant. You can only say good. And if it's better than good, then it's double good. And if it's better than that, then it's double plus good. And they wanted you to stay so fucking droned out, and they chose your wives and husbands for you. It was all crazy, yo. Yeah, but then you read Brave New World. That was another good book written. Brave New World was written like in the 40s and shit, yo. And in Brave New World, there was this fictional drug called Soma. And then they really, like, that shit is a real thing now. Like, Soma is a real drug. Like, that shit is fucking crazy. And all the humans were bred to be what they're going to be for their life, yo. So you had some people who were bred to be politicians and different things like that. Then you had people who were just bred to be fucking workers for whatever they needed workers for, yo. And you had your alpha, beta, gamma, all the classes going all the way down, yo. But then you still had like this one area where like people live normal, kind of, and they just call them shits the savages. Yo, reading is good, yo. I read a lot of the classic books when I was a young boy. The Grapes of Wrath, Of Mice and Men. What's another good one? Lord of the Flies, Animal Farm. Yo, Animal Farm is crazy, yo. A lot of people ain't never read that fucking book, yo. Like, the savages, yo. The land of the savages. And that's because they still reproduce sexually, whereas I forgot what they called this. They renamed Europe to something else, but all of the fucking reproduction was done in like factories, yo. Everything was like everybody was test tube babies, and so they made humans perfectly how they wanted them to be, yo. And now when you look at the CRISPR-Cas9 system, they've been working on the CRISPR-Cas9 for like 10 fucking years, and the Human Genome Project and all this shit. That's what it basically is. It's fucking Brave New World, where they can create a human. If you want a male child, 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, you can tweak his genetics so that you get that person. That shit is real. Yeah, of mice and men. And that's the thing, like, I had this one aunt, yo. My aunt, she's like, she's a super nerd, yo. Like, she's the head of the electrical engineering department for Boeing, the airplane company. Their electrical engineering department for their airplanes, she's the head of that department. One of the heads. Like, she's a fucking super nerd, yo. And yo, this woman, she never brought me nothing but books, yo. Like, for gifts, anytime she gave me a fucking gift, it was a book. Swear to God, like, all the classic books, all the classic literature books are fucking comic books. And that was it, yo. Like, she made me a fucking reader, yo. By the time I got in high school, I done read all this shit. The Great Gatsby, I already read that shit, yo. Of Mice and Men, I already read that shit. I read that shit like middle school, 6th grade. I was reading fucking Oliver Twist. You know what I'm saying? Got in high school and it was like, oh, we're gonna read Oliver Twist. I'm like, I read that shit like years ago. Y'all ain't never read Oliver Twist? Like, like what the fuck, yo? But she had me good on that shit, yo. I remember that shit. But yo, and then I ain't gonna lie, yo. I cursed her out without cursing her out. I got too much respect for my elders and my family to use profanity towards them. But once I started doing my own studies and started doing like a selective reading program for myself, and I read like the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I read goddamn Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. I read Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. And I started reading this shit. I called my aunt. I'm like, yo, why you ain't never let me read these books? You got me reading all this other stuff, yo, forever. You got me reading all these other stories. Why you ain't never like give me this shit? Like, what was wrong? What was wrong with this material for me to read? Oh, and she just really ain't had. I didn't think you would be interested in it. You know, our family wasn't really like that. You ain't never gave me no Marcus Garvey to read. You know what I'm saying? It's like that shit kind of fucked me up, like real bad, yo. Like, I don't know. I still be confused about that shit today, yo. Like, I don't know. Yeah, a real positive influence. Like I say, man, when I started reading other stuff, I was like, damn. What if I would have read this when I was, 12, 13 years old? What if I would have read Malcolm X when I was 13? I would have had a whole different perspective on the world at a younger age. You know what I'm saying? What if I would have read some Marcus Garvey? But I got to it myself. I finally got around to it. And I love reading stuff like that. And I love reading science literature. I love reading art stuff. I used to hate reading stuff about art, yo. But I don't mind that shit so much now. Yo, Tyson, what up, man? I'm in here running my mouth when I should be painting.
Difficult things to understand that I believe I can't have all the answers on this side anyway because it's not heaven, but knowing that there is that to look forward to just means a lot to me.
Knowing I can't have all the answers on this side because this isn't heaven. Knowing I can't have all the answers on this side because this isn't heaven. What are you trying to say, lady? And now she basically says my theory of how you have to be, how your train of thought has to be if you're like uber religious like this lady right here. If you really believe. You guys ever heard of the simulation hypothesis?
By them. I mean, I guess some people are overcome by them, but for me, it's been a rock in the midst of a lot of difficult things to understand that I believe I can't have all the answers on this side anyway because it's not heaven, but knowing that
I can't have all the answers on this side because it's not heaven. The simulation hypothesis is some people think that we're actually living inside of a simulation. This is not that what we perceive as a reality, and we're all having this shared experience, supposedly, but at the same time, it's not real. It's running on a substrate that is produced by a more advanced group of beings or something. So we're not in the real world. We are a program running on a simulation. And some people argue that when you look at the first video games that came out, like Pong, it was just like, you know, like two little blocks and you hit the little block back and forth, boing, boing. And then you look at video games now and we have VR and they're getting more intense. Like in 100 years from now, how immersive will a virtual reality world be and how indistinguishable will it be from reality? It will be almost, there will be no way to tell reality from virtual reality. And then what if you can program something into this virtual reality to just live in it? It's a weird thing to think about. But if you're uber religious and you really believe in God, if you really believe in God,
it's been a rock in the midst of a lot of difficult things to understand that I believe I can't have all the answers on this side anyway because it's not heaven, but knowing that there...
Because it's not heaven. I can't have all the answers on this side because it's not heaven. Which means heaven is a completely different place in a completely different realm or dimension or whatever from what we perceive as Earth and our universe and the cosmos and all of this shit. So heaven is somewhere different, and we're on the other side from where heaven is at, on a different frequency or whatever. And heaven is where God is at, right? So God is in heaven in a whole completely different dimension or realm or whatever, and he created all of this. So he created something outside of the space and time that he occupies and put us here. So to God, this is a simulation. This is something that he created, but it's not where he's at. And we can only experience this while we're in the simulation, but when you die, you get to go to the real world where God is at. And that's crazy, like, that you think that there is, like, another dimension to go to where the creator of this dimension is at. Which means you don't think this is like the real world. This is just something this life is something you have to live to prove that you're worthy to go to the real world. So you can get out of this simulated world and you live a life with God. It's the weirdest thing, right? Think about it. believing in God is believing in the simulation hypothesis or the simulation theory.
That to look forward to just means a lot to me.
That's really wonderful that you are able to use your faith in that way. And I'm glad that faith works for you in that manner. If you don't mind, I'd love to tell you a little bit about myself to kind of echo what you're saying. So I grew up in the Christian church, and I was a student leader for an evangelical ministry for a bit. And I also used faith as a tremendous, I would say, comfort for what I was going through in my life and what was going on. And I found a lot of great people in my community. I did a lot of activities through them, and I thought I was doing a lot of great stuff for the world. But what I realized was when I was talking about faith that way, that didn't have anything to do with whether God was real or not, or whether he actually existed. I realized that the comforts that I'm getting from this doesn't necessarily have to come from a faith position, and it could be from something else entirely. And actually, my faith I felt the same way as you probably do right now, where I was kind of struggling for answers to kind of come up with a better way than just kind of the empty fluff I've been told for a lot of my life of how to justify my faith. But I really found that I couldn't do it. And that was really hard for me too. But what I got from that was, okay, I can either go back and try to look for better ways to justify my beliefs, or I could change my beliefs. And sometimes change is a good thing, and we need to update our beliefs to match everything else that we find and see if it, corresponds with the background information that we already know. And maybe that's something you want to consider for yourself, or maybe you want to go back and find other ways to figure out why you believe what you believe. But it's important that we do have these discussions anyway and are able to talk about these experiences because they're incredibly important. I know it was very, very important for me.
I really want to credit you for calling a show like this to discuss this. And if you would, it takes guts. It really does. But I really encourage you to take a long, hard look at faith as you've defined it and ask yourself about, is this testable? And I recognize that the beliefs that you have because you think that this is true, in your view, they give you value. They've given your life meaning. You think that you've gotten through difficult times because there's an entity, there's a God who's helping you through it, who's watching you. There's this wonderful payoff at the end, perhaps. It could be kind of difficult to consider the possibility that might not be true. But I would just encourage you to maybe just consider it, like investigate faith a little bit. And hey, if you find out that faith is not a really reliable way for getting to that conclusion, it just might be yourself who got through that difficult time. It just might have been you.
Well, I mean, I believe that we all have different strengths and we have different personality traits, and I think that the experiences we go through shape how we respond to them to survive and stuff. But I mean, that's the human part of it, but still I believe that in the part that gives me faith, I believe in that too.
Let me ask you this then. If you think you were born in any other part of the world or in a different time period, would you rely on your Christian faith to get you through those hard times, or do you think you would rely on something else?
No. If I was born and raised in China, then I guess, is it Buddha are they Buddhists mostly in China?
They're probably not Christians.
Yeah.
They're probably not Christians back then.
I think, Chinese probably really rely a lot on ancestral knowledge and the gods that they believe in. But I mean, I guess it's possible if I had been born there, then I wouldn't be the Christian that I am today. And does that mean that what I believe is wrong because I could be different if I'd been born somewhere else?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Why not?
Yeah, not necessarily. I would agree with you there. But the reason...
not necessarily, but you just acknowledge the simple fact that if you were born somewhere else or at a different time period in history, you would probably believe something different. So why the fuck do you believe what you believe now, knowing that everybody else believe just as strong as you do in their gods. And you would be a fucking Muslim if you were born in the Middle East, or a fucking Buddhist if you were born somewhere else. And it's like, and that's what I ain't never understand either. Like, so if I was born in a different family, I would have been a Muslim. That's just would have been what it is. And like, I would have never learned any of this stuff anyway, and it wouldn't have mattered to me. And then I would have been preaching about Allah, and trying to tell everybody that Allah is the true God. Believers that's like, they don't want to check themselves. Is like, and she just checked herself, and then that cognitive dissonance kick in where she tries to hold a negative and a positive view of the same aspect at the same time. You can't do that. On a higher being, that's the thing. Like, is it a being? And why must it be some type of being that's above us? Like, I don't get that. I never have understood this fucking. There's something greater. Shit. I'm getting paint every way. Shit, man. Painting myself.
Brought that up is because you talked about how your faith was almost a result of your experiences and the way that you grew up. And I'm wondering if we can change some of the variables there about that faith. Does it change the way that we think about it as describing true things?
Yeah, well, there are people who were born Chinese, raised Chinese, and then and during their lives became very devout Christians. So.
Well, there's also people who were like me, who were born very devout Christians and became atheists.
But let's not let the main point here. Let's not let the main point get lost, though. Is that it's important to take. It's very important to take a look at this core process that you're using to come to these conclusions. That everything that you're talking about, again, the universe being created in 6 days and then resting on the seventh, the holy book being true, that there's a God and all this, and it seems like faith is the big thing. So I think it could be useful if you were to watch this again, particularly the part where we were talking about faith. Especially how you're defining it, and see if it is really as similar to the trust that you might put into chair, for example, as you think that it is, because of that potentially missing testing component.
Okay. All right. Well, it's been nice talking to you.
Yeah, it's been really nice talking to you. I hope you give us a call back. I won't be
absolutely.
Here. Yeah, I'll be here.
I'd love to have you call back on this show. And if you want to talk to me more, I have an email address as well. It should be on the thing, but it's truth@atheist-community.org. And that's for anybody who wants to talk to me about anything that we talked about today. And if you are interested in coming back on, just send me an email there, and we'll get you back on.
And what's so funny?
Okay.
I'm wondering what you're laughing.
I'm laughing because my son did not say this is an atheist radio show.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Well, yeah, so that's...
Yeah, I'm totally not offended.
Well,
You and I have had a lot of really great
So
conversations.
the reason why my email address says atheist is because this is part of the atheist community of Austin. I don't actually exclusively consider this show an atheist show, though. I actually have had theist co-hosts on in the past.
If you were on hold, you probably listened to how excited Dan was when a person calling about UFOs.
Yeah, like this is a show about all kinds of beliefs. And like, I'm not necessarily defending atheism on this show or saying that atheism is true, whatever that means in that sense. I'm more about I'm more about exploring people's beliefs.
What's that?
Yeah.
What's that word? What was the word you were using, Nathaniel? And there was a word you guys, epistemology, was that the word?
Yes. Yes.
What is epistemology? Why you believe something?
Yeah, epistemology is the philosophical study of why we think the things we think are true, or basically how we know the things that we know.
Okay, all right, well, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been really nice talking to you too. I appreciate your attitude too.
All right.
It's very nice talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again.
She was a joy.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. I hope she calls back.
Yeah, that was great.
I'm done after I finish some of this.
Acquire your land plot on the decentralized city map and construct a building to raise its value. Produce resources that are required by other buildings to operate. Establish your business.
We have Canadian Catholic from Canada on with Don and Matt. How are you?
Hey everyone, nice. Thank you for taking my call. I'm honored to be on the show.
What should I call you for short? Because Canadian Catholic from Canada isn't going to fly.
You can just call me Canadian or Catholic or whatever. You know, that's fine too for me.
Okay.
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 So either way, I just wanted to discuss my. Basically, I was not raised Catholic. I was more of a fundamentalist Christian, and then I deconverted.
Mm-hmm.
And I became a full-blown inner circle atheist. I was one for about a year. Okay.
I don't know what an inner circle atheist
Yeah,
is.
boy, I need to join this.
Yeah, well, so basically, I was using all the arguments I hear from you. I was a full-fledged atheist. Okay, I was into it. I was into skepticism, everything.
Okay, so you can tell me that, but I'd much rather you say, why were you an atheist?
Because I just realized that when I was a fundamentalist, my views I had bad arguments, so my views did not comport to reality. Just realized, and became. I just started to say I lack belief in God.
Okay, so now you're a Catholic, which I would assume if somebody tells me they were an atheist because they didn't have good arguments for God, and now they're a Catholic, that must mean that they have good arguments for Catholicism.
Yes, I will just make a point real quick and say that I realized ultimately it was a journey that the skepticism I was applying to fundamentalism and other positions, I was not applying to my own as an atheist. And I believe you...
To your own what as an atheist?
I'll just make a point. To my positions as an atheist, I was not applying.
But that... No. See, okay, here's a problem. I am an atheist because I'm a skeptic. Because when I look at the claims for religions, I find that they don't have good arguments.
Let me make a better point. Just give me 30 seconds to make a point. Atheists like me, for example, and you, we say that we lack belief in God. I used to say that. I no longer say that. I'm a very devout Catholic. I'm a papist, Romanist, everything. But I used to say that I lack belief in God, and this is not a claim. This is just then I realized that to be an atheist, you have to claim at least that to lack belief in God is a logical position with all the evidence we have, and I no longer believe that. Does that make sense?
Have some evidence, is what you're saying.
See,
what
I'm saying is, I'm an atheist because I'm a skeptic, because the religious claims, the claims for God, have not met their burden of proof, don't have sufficient evidence to warrant belief. And you're saying that you were an atheist in that you claim to lack a belief in a God, and you think that lacking a belief in God is not. So basically, instead of proving that there is a God, you became convinced that you couldn't lack belief in God.
I became convinced that given the evidence, atheism, lack of belief in God, is no longer something rational to hold.
Okay, what is the evidence?
Well, I like to say that it's a preponderance of evidence. There is not really one piece.
You know that 100 million half-baked pieces of crap don't add up to anything, right?
I've heard that same dismissal again and misrepresentation, but what I'm trying to say...
It's not a misrepresentation. What's your best argument and evidence for the existence of God? Because if your best doesn't get us any closer, then a whole bunch of inferior ones aren't going to help.
Matt, just a second. With all due respect, you define evidence in a very constrained way, right?
Yes, I defined evidence in such a way that it is consistent with reality, that it is the sort of thing that people should rely on to make decisions. If you broaden evidence to the point where somebody said something, or this feels right, or we don't have a better explanation for this, that's not evidence. Those are all fallacies.
Sure, but what I'm trying to say is that there's different categories of evidence. You could have scientific evidence, you can have historical evidence, you can have preponderance of evidence. So given what we...
I understand that there are different categories of evidence. My position is there sufficient evidence to believe that a God exists?
I would say yes, given
Then what is it?
So there is different lines we could pursue. Of course, we could...
Yeah,
Just fucking pick one to start with, rather than trying to give me a primer on epistemology.
Okay, I would all go with, for example, an argument from contingency.
I have an entire video responding to the argument of contingency.
Misrepresenting it.
Okay, goodbye. Goodbye. If you are the type of person who thinks that the video I put up responding to the argument of contingency misrepresents it, then you can reply to me individually. You can email sans.deity@gmail.com or president@atheist-community.com, or you can email the Atheist Debates thing correctly. But I'm not going to let you sit here and just pretend that you are now in a rational position by claiming that I'm misrepresenting the argument from contingency. That shit's not going to fly, ever. If you think I've made a mistake, then instead of calling in to say, I used to be an atheist, now I'm a Catholic because of the preponderance of evidence, what you should have done is called in to say, I think there's an error in your video about the argument from contingency. In which case, I would say, I would need to review that video on the argument from contingency. What is the error? And let's look at it. So you're free to email. But if you're just going to come in here and flat out assert that I needed your lecture on epistemology, or that I misrepresented contingency, the notion that you are now a believer because you think the lack of belief position isn't warranted by the preponderance of evidence, and that you weren't applying your skepticism properly, just means you don't understand skepticism. Because the fundamental truth here is very simple. There are many different God claims. And while each one of them might have some anecdotal evidence for it, or historical evidence for it, that is evidence that is consistent with the claim, and not evidence that necessarily reaches support of that claim. It's like saying, hey, we found this ancient city, and it bears a striking resemblance to what we would expect to find if we were to find the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah. We found on this mountain over here some things that were a little bit reminiscent of what might have been Noah's Ark. That is evidence that is consistent with the claim, but not necessarily tied to the claim, and certainly not sufficient to warrant accepting the claim. Meanwhile, if the God of Catholicism exists, that God can easily demonstrate its existence, it should be without question that such a God exists. And by the way, the Catholic religion is basically organized fucking crime that is absolutely disgusting. Now, are you better on evolution than the Baptists are? You bet. Are you better with science now than the Baptists are? You bet. But you weren't when you threw Galileo in jail, and none of those religions were when we started burning witches. And you're not only making excuses for the same book that other people believe in, but as a Catholic, I guess I could have left him on to find out if he buys into this notion of transubstantiation, so that when we're eating the Eucharist, do we have to worry about whether we got a toenail or foreskin as that part of Jesus that we're actually eating? But don't pretend that all of this comes together in a package that makes disbelief irrational. That is the foundation of what he was essentially saying, that disbelief is irrational. And it's not. I
think he was saying that he came across evidence that convinced him. I think that's what he was trying to say.
He specifically said that the lack of belief claim is unskeptical and irrational. And what he's arguing is that there's sufficient evidence that nobody should be able to say, I just lack belief for lack of evidence. And that is basically a claim that you're just too skeptical. And that means you don't understand skepticism, because you can't be too skeptical. Skeptics want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. They want to make sure that their degree of belief is proportional to the evidence that supports it. And I would say that there is not a strong, devout Romanist Catholic on the planet that came to that position via skepticism. If there were, we would have published articles demonstrating the truth of the Roman Catholic claims. This would be Nobel Prize worthy, it would be Templeton Prize worthy, it would be all over the place, and not just somebody who calls in to say once upon a time was a skeptic and you were dishonest about the argument from contingency. Go fuck yourself.
I thought for sure we were going to go to the miracles. I thought miracles were going to be his preponderance of evidence.
The argument from contingency, by the way, I'm not going to go through it all here. You can go watch the video. But much in the same way the Kalam doesn't actually get to a God, contingency is essentially kind of circular in the sense that the thing we're trying to prove, you're just arguing, is these things are in a category that are contingent on others, and God is in a category that's not. So you're kind of defining it that way. But anyway.
To manage a team, you should be using Monday.com. It's a platform to manage any team and any project. Marketing campaigns, classic project management, sales pipelines, creative productions, anything. We'll start with a board. Here you can track everything your team is working on. Columns are completely customizable, so you can track what's important to you. Everything is visual. See who's in charge of what and easily prioritize. Upload files and get quick approvals and feedback. Views let you see the information in your board in different ways. Make sure projects don't overlap. Or see the breakdown of progress. Whoa. If you want to see the bigger picture, use dashboards. You as a manager can get key insights and metrics from all your projects in one place. You can even broadcast dashboards around the office. Monday.com integrates with your big...
Well, I just said, as long as it happens before next weekend, because some people don't watch this today.
Goalposts.
I know, I said that earlier. Because not everybody watches live. Some people
the viewers will decide on that. Yeah.
Well, in any case, I cannot be wrong. Please don't make me wrong. That would hurt me. Kenny in Oklahoma, you're on with Lloyd and Matt. How are you?
I'm fine. I want to make sure you can hear me. I had my phone on mute. I'm not sure this new phone's
loud and clear.
We hear you just fine.
Pretty clear? Good. I just had a phone call. Hang on my other phone. Now it's all gone. Okay,
Isn't it annoying when phone calls happen at inopportune times?
Yeah, phone calls are a phone call. It's pretty... Well, anyway, I called in last Sunday and really enjoyed it. Yeah, a young lady was there, and she was very polite, very kind. I'm sure she has a lot of friends on both sides of the fence, whether theistic or atheist. And I asked her a question about why is it true that I've got to give a explanation for something that, let's see, Carl Sagan's, I believe the quote came up on the program that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I'm just wondering if the vast majority of the people in the world, if it's ordinary for people to be spiritual, religious, and believe in the supernatural.
You're confusing the claims of
whether or not it should be even considered extraordinary in the first place.
No. You're confusing what the claim is, Kenny. It's not extraordinary that people believe weird shit. That's not extraordinary. It's not extraordinary that people believe in a God. We know. You don't even have to prove it. You don't have to find any evidence. I'm aware that people believe in a God. I used to. Lloyd used to. I meet people all the time and talk to them. It's not the belief in the God that is the extraordinary claim. It is that there is a God is extraordinary.
Well, I think that I got to stop looking at the television set with the delay and everything. What I was talking about, I was using the word in a straightforward, commonplace way, and it's even been acknowledged by child psychologists and cultural anthropologists and people that, religion is extremely commonplace, always has been. It's not just an ancient to think that way. And extraordinary does come above commonplace.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Why are you talking about all these people who say religion is common? That's not an extraordinary... We agree. He came out of a religion, I came out of a religion. Religion is extraordinarily common. I just got done explaining to you that it's not the fact that people believe in a God. It's not the fact that people are religious. It's not the fact that people have hair. None of those things are extraordinary.
The fact that there's one of me and 8.5 million Jehovah's Witnesses doesn't make the 8.5 million Jehovah's Witnesses correct about the state of the universe.
The claim
No, and I'm
that
not
there
making
is a
a
God,
bandwagon argument.
the claim that there is a God is the one that is the
Claim it's
extraordinary.
ordinary.
No, it's not ordinary.
Not true, but ordinary. There's a difference
No.
between the two words.
Are you going to let me talk, or am I going to hang up on you? Okay. It's not extraordinary for people to claim there's a God, but it's extraordinary for there to be a God. That is the claim that is extraordinary. The claim that there's something supernatural. That's what needs to be demonstrated. It's fundamentally different to say, I've got a $20 bill in my wallet, than it is to say, I have $5 billion in a bank account. Even though we know that those are possible, one of them is more extraordinary than the other. When we have something where we have zero examples, zero confirmed examples supported by arguments and evidence of something occurring, like I have an invisible pet dragon in my garage, to go with Sagan, that is an extraordinary claim. And theists are arguing that they have a friend or an associate or something that they point to that exists outside of space and time, whatever that means, and has immense powers, and yet they can demonstrate none of this. That is an incredibly extraordinary claim.
I can understand why somebody who subscribes to some form of naturalism, like philosophical, metaphysical, or methodological, would look at this as a strange or extraordinary claim. But I necessarily applying methodological naturalism to everything.
We both know that. That's not right.
You never had to utter that.
Yeah.
All right. And so,
but also, I point out that it's not us exercising methodological naturalism has nothing to do with how extraordinary the God claim is. Because what you're trying to do there is suggest that we, because we have this devotion to naturalism, have ruled out a God. And that is utterly dishonest, because I'm not a naturalist in the sense that some people would describe, and I didn't rule out a God because I believe in naturalism. I do not accept that there is a God because there is insufficient evidence for it. So setting aside whether or not you're a naturalist or anything else, is there evidence for a God, and is it sufficient to justify the specifics of the claim?
Great. No, that's exactly what I thought I would hear. And what evidence are you asking for if you're not asking for naturalistic evidence?
I don't know. You'd have to, first of all, describe the God, give its characteristics, and tell us what evidence there is.
But this is the thing with you have theism, you're a theist. You also have deism. So a deist will say, well, the universe has an intelligent beginning. It's just not interested in what's happening on our planet. Theists, including you, say not only does the universe have an intelligent beginning, I can tell you that entity's characteristics, its personality, what things it likes, what things it doesn't like, what books it's inspired, what religions it's inspired. There's a whole bunch of claims attached there, and you have selected this particular God and dismissed a whole bunch of other gods on entirely subjective grounds, which I would hazard a guess are probably influenced by the culture that you were raised in more than anything.
Well, I want to congratulate you, Lloyd, on pinning the tail on the donkey falsely here by labeling me as being subjective when I haven't given you any indication I am subjective about it.
Sorry, it says T on the call, so T stands for theist. So you're telling me you're not a theist?
Theist isn't subjective. That's an assumption on your part.
What objective evidence can you provide for the God?
Okay. Well, I think it's a really good idea when you're looking at evidence of whether or not God exists, or whether or not you can actually talk to someone's mindset in a way that they would get it and understand it. First of all, you have to have good communication. And so we're going to have to be natural a little bit here. Because you wouldn't characterize yourself necessarily.
Can you skip the preamble? I've got 6 lines of people and a whole bunch of people are eating Chinese food. All I asked for was evidence.
Okay. Well, pointing to the God of the Old Testament,
that's a good one to pick.
One God, source of all, one God, Father of all, exists because in 17 instances of Scripture, you've got Hebrew verb describing that God stretches out the heavens with a beginning time and that it continues. solid or something. You've even got medieval times. You've got inflation even in the Kabbalah. It's clearly spelled out there. God contracted his spirit. The seed of the universe was born. He relaxed the contraction. The universe expanded. It says that literally in the Kabbalah. So you don't have to be a scientist to believe in inflation.
It also says that plants were around before there was light. Or sorry, before there was the sun.
Whether or not those parts are talking about stages of creation or not. I'm not arguing that.
So here's the thing.
On the 17 verses of Scripture spread all over the...
Why should we care about 17 verses of Scripture that people interpret in a specific way after they find out what reality is?
Well, I cannot argue that inference is clear as Scripture always. Human inference can have error. But in the case that you want to identify a specific God, you're going to have to make him compatible to that religion and its documents.
I find it curious that you say specific God and then follow that up with you're going to have to make him. Because
I'm going to have, when I say you're, I'm speaking collectively.
Nobody, no, you're missing the point, Kenny. Nobody has to make God anything. Nobody has to make God anything. You believe in a God, and we asked for what objective evidence do you have, and you go to Scripture and interpretations of Scripture, which is not objective.
From your favorite religion.
Okay, in science, astrophysics, the consensus is that dark energy is a thing that is causing the inflation of the universe. It's constantly being used, yet we're not constantly running out of it. Also, we can't identify what it is. We can't see it.
Right. I agree. I completely agree. We can't. Hang on, Kenny. Hang the fuck on. I agree. We don't know what it is. We don't know much about it. You're talking about speculative physics that isn't resolved. You don't get to stick your God in and claim that your God's responsible for that. You don't get to say there's something science doesn't understand, and therefore my God is responsible for it. That's not objective evidence for it. That's you filling a gap with God.
Even though the energy itself has the same characteristics as God.
What characteristics is God? We don't even know what the characteristics of the energy are. This is, I tell you what.
That's the point.
Right.
No.
That's the point.
I love it when
we don't know.
I love it when they cite science.
Yeah.
Here's all this science.
As if I gathered the 10 world's best experts in dark matter, how many of them are going to think that dark matter proves God?
Yeah.
You don't know what the hell you're talking about, Kenny. When you're talking about speculative theoretical physics, by the way, we have a Big Bang model. We have the common model of the Big Bang cosmology. Science doesn't say that's true. It just says it is currently the best model we have to explain the expansion of the universe. It's not making a declaration of truth. If we find something new and interesting, maybe there's dark matter, maybe there's not. Maybe there's dark energy, maybe there's not. Maybe we fundamentally have misunderstood something. We are still exploring and trying to understand the universe. And what you're doing is saying, oh, let me give you some objective evidence for God. And you start talking about dark matter.
Based on my subjectively chosen religion.
Yeah. I should hang up at that point. Because neither of us are physicists. At least I assume you're not a physicist.
Well, actually.
It would be a mistake for me to assume that. And I guarantee you Kenny's not a physicist.
Yeah. That much is clear.
But the physicists were all cringing every time you uttered a new word. So when you come up with your dark energy, dark matter, proves God paper and submit it to a peer-reviewed journal and get your Nobel Prize, call back and tell me what a jackass I was for hanging up on you. But until then, there's a gap in our knowledge, and you tried to stick your God in it when we asked for objective evidence, and so it's just as subjective as Lloyd accused you of doing, which you thought was going to be wrong.
And
be a couple of days.
Not quite sure yet. We've got John in Georgia. You're on with Lloyd and Matt.
Sure.
Hey, Matt. Lloyd, how y'all doing?
Not bad.
Not bad.
Hey, Lloyd, I called Talk Heathen Audio, and you didn't give me a hard time. I think this will not be a little different.
Well, I'm just getting started, so don't push me.
Okay.
Well, it said here the call screener's got a note saying You want to know why atheists characterize faith negatively and that we all have faith.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just get right to it. How would you define faith, Matt?
Faith is the excuse people give for believing something when they don't have a good reason.
Okay, I appreciate that, but you don't think you have faith?
Okay, so here's my thing with faith. Faith gets you to absolutely any religious conclusion. If you're going to base your beliefs on faith, why would you possibly have a justification for choosing one religion over another? This is the thing that irritates me about the excuse that you often hear from Jehovah's Witnesses when you explain to them why the beliefs are absurd, why the beliefs don't work. It will all boil down to, oh, well, we just have to have faith. Well, if you just have to have faith, why are you a Jehovah's Witness? Why aren't you a Mormon? Why don't you believe that Joseph Smith found some golden plates and then interpreted them into a book and then conveniently lost them? You may as well be any religion. You know, just pick one. Pick one that you like. That's not how we get to meaningful truth conclusions.
Yeah, so when you asked me to define faith, I gave you the definition that I tend to use. I realize there are others. I've done debates on faith before. And what a lot of theists will say is, some of them will go to like Hebrews 11:1, but others would just, their view of faith is, I believe something in the absence of absolute certainty. And therefore, we all have faith. Like you have faith that this chair will hold you, Matt. You're sitting in a chair. You have faith that the chair will hold you up. And my answer is no. I have a reasonable confidence that the chair will hold me up based on evidence. I'm not absolutely certain that this chair will hold me up. I'm not sitting down saying, ooh, I have faith that there is a chair. I can see it, I can investigate it, and everything else. And so, by and large, when we're talking about faith, no matter how people define it, what they often mean is they use faith as the reason for their belief because they don't have a good reason. Because for anything else, if you ask somebody, why do you believe this? They give a reason. And it's not limited merely to religious people. There are people I've debated in the secular community, and you ask them question A and you get an answer. Question B, you get an answer. Question C, you get an answer. And then question D, well, I just kind of have faith. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have presuppositions. I do. I have to presuppose logic and reason. I have to presuppose that I'm sharing a reality with other people because it's something that is unfalsifiable. But apart from that, when people appeal to faith as a reason for believing something about reality, it just means they don't have a good reason.
Well, number one, I do see where I live at. When you said if you ask people why do you believe, they do not have a good reason. So I know what you're talking about there, and I agree with you. But I would like to go back to the chair analogy, if I could.
Okay.
And maybe I would like to give another one, and I hope it doesn't get laughs, and YouTube don't go crazy. But and I'm not going to.
I wouldn't place money on that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean you're right. I'm not going to use the word comfort one. It's going to sound like it. I think, Lloyd, you have kids.
Yeah.
So are you married?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you with your wife 24/7?
No.
All right.
No. So
I'm gonna get out of here.
there are times when your wife is not with you. So how
And now, as we speak, she isn't with me.
Okay. So how do you know she's not cheating on you? You don't, correct?
You don't.
You don't know that she's not cheating on you.
So he's not absolutely certain that his wife isn't cheating on.
Better go cook some hot wings and fries. I'll be back in here in the morning. Not sure what I'm gonna do with this background on this one yet, but we'll come up with something interesting. Yeah, just roll right over the picture. Damn it. shit. Catch you guys on the flip side.